All right, we're back. It says I'm live again. Now I gotta get all those people back. I had 11 people watching. Now they all gotta come back for me. Every new platform is so unique. It's there. People are coming back. Excellent. We're over here trying YouTube. I'm getting used to a new platform, but I like this. Ooh, I like it. I can sit at my computer. I can use my normal webcam and this is my podcast get up. This is where all the magic happens right here. Yeah, so I'm liking this. Twitter was flaking out on us, so we abandoned Twitter. We just abandoned that. We still do a Facebook. We got Instagram. Now we've added a YouTube platform. Brent created a sexy little red graphic for our promo. Yeah, can everybody hear me? Somebody tell me that you can hear me. It says that my microphone is working, but I need to know if you all can hear me. Part of my problem is that it forced me to use Chrome, and I hate Chrome. I despise Chrome as a browser. Nevertheless, here we are. I can see no chat, so I don't know if my audio is working. Somebody be brave. Tell me that you can hear me. There we go. Oh, yeah. Okay, now I've got my chat. That's what I'm looking for. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. It's working, boss, everybody says. Okay, wonderful. Excellent. So before we even get started, I'm supposed to tell you that hit that subscribe button, do all the things. We're still trying to make sure that we're spreading the love around all my social media platforms and networks. I got Brent Billings talking to me. He always gets the veto. He's telling me that audio is good. I pay attention to any messages coming in from Brent Billings, everybody. That is the rule. He's going to help me funnel questions as I need it to. But yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go find my Twitter if you're on Twitter. Go find, the Facebook page, the Bema. Don't go to my personal page on Facebook. I have 4,999 friends. And the reason I don't have 5,000 is I have one friend request strategically out there that I'm saving, I'm placeholding for. But go find the Bema Facebook page. Go find the Twitter stuff. Go find all the things. We were doing that push. If you were following the posts, we were doing that push because I've been in conversations about writing a book. The beautiful news is that we had multiple offers come in, and I'm sending an email out tomorrow after spending the weekend and almost a week thinking and praying over it, of which offer we're going to accept. We're going to get a contract signed, and we're going to be moving towards a book, hopefully early 2023 is what we're thinking as far as a publish date. Who knows? Fun times, though. So it's all working, everybody. So thanks. I'm still humbled every day that people would want to listen to what I say, listen to the things that Brent and I create, that they would subscribe to YouTube channels and Twitter feeds and all that stuff. So thank you. And feel free to do that. It's awesome. I really love, and while I'm at it, I'll just say thank you for all of you. Excuse me. I can see names on here that support us financially. Thank you for that. It makes a huge difference. We've been able to hire not just Brent Billings. We've been able to hire some more help inside Impact, outside of Impact, pay people to help us out. You're going to start to hear on the podcast in session 6, we're going to start expanding the Bema teaching team so that it's not just Marty, because nobody wants that. That turns into a cult really quickly. We're probably 200 episodes too late on that. But we're going to widen it out, get more voices, get more perspectives, get more people involved. And all that's, making sure that we always have equipment that works. Making sure like it's the support that you guys have sent in. So many people at $10 a month. So many of them. Still only a fraction, by the way, just a small little fraction of the people we have listening, but there's still so many that it's made a huge difference. So I'm just loving that, and I'm so thankful. Like, it blesses me beyond words on so many levels. I'm humbled. Just thank you for that. It's awesome. All right, guys, let's see here. We'll just pick a platform. I'm gonna get Slack out of the way. By the way, I'm sure Brent Billings can drop this in the chat if he's with us. Jamie Geyer. Oh, my heart. Oh, it's so good to see your name. You have no idea. Oh, that just made my whole night. Brent can put this in chat, but if you slide over to bemadiscipleship.com/news, on there's a link where you can sign up for the Slack workspace, which is where we have all kinds of online interaction. There's a video I think you'll see in the welcome email. It kind of explains what it is and some of the informal ground rules and those kind of things. But such a cool space. So I'm going to slide over to Slack because I think we only have one question. It was a good one, though. And I'm going to get that out of the way so that I don't have to remember it. Let's see here. Where are we at? We're going to go. Ooh, I like that. Okay. We're sliding over here. I'm going to find the question. Bear with me. Here we go. Ooh, more questions coming in. Oh, there's more than one. Ooh, Slack's getting busy. Let's see here. If someone you knew who knows next to nothing about the Christian or Jewish faiths asked you what makes Torah so special, how would you, if somebody didn't know anything about Christianity or Judaism, and they said, what makes Torah? And I would assume the Bible. But what I'm actually the question was Torah. I'm going to keep my answer kind of refined to Torah. What's so special about Torah? How would you answer? What a good question. I would say, Torah was written a long time ago, whether even an early day or a late day, doesn't matter. It's still thousands of years ago. And yet the revolutionary thing about Torah is that it teaches the reader how to think, which is timeless. Now, far too many Christians interact with the Bible as a whole, but especially Torah, as just a set of rules, like a static set of laws and restrictions and rules that they have to follow. But what Torah is designed to do is to teach you not what to do, but how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. It's to teach you how to rule, how to judge. Torah teaches you how to discern, which is this dynamic thing that keeps going and keeps growing and keeps going somewhere, because how to think isn't stuck in history. How to think there's elbow room to it. It can go places as history moves on. And so that's what I think is so brilliant about Torah. So, and then it's like, how do you talk about, there's 613 commandments in Torah. Okay, so let's just talk about the 10 commandments. And if anybody's seen Rabbi David Foreman's teaching on the 10 commandments, it's phenomenal. But the 10 commandments are really this summation. These 10 commandments, which are actually 5 principles, because there's 5 and 5, and it's really a parallelism, not really a chiasm. It's not really inverted, but it is a parallelism where 1 relates to 6 and 2 to 7 and 3 to 8 and 4 to 9 and 5 to 10. And there are these meta principles, and the meta principles actually are tied together in a linear fashion, again, to teach us how to think. What is the heart of all of Torah? What is the heart of the law? What is the heart of all these commandments about how to farm your fields and what clothes to wear and how to pursue sexuality and all, like, what is it all about? There is a single thread, and it's all about how to treat people, Or as Jesus followers, we might say, the whole law, Paul said, hangs on this one command: love one another, love others as yourself. That's good. That's good. I could talk like 20 more minutes on that, but for the sake of all the other questions, let's keep moving. Knowing what you know now and experiencing what you've experienced, if you suddenly were no longer working with impact ministries and without a church community, oh, Brian, hot dog, what a question. I don't know if I like that question here in a public live stream. If I found myself without a job at Impact and without a church community, what would you do? I suppose it would depend on why I found myself without a job and why I found myself without a church community. Because I moved from across the country. I moved from Idaho to Ohio, and I didn't have a church community when I moved. It would have been easy to say I didn't have one and to I believe in radical fellowship with people that I don't agree with. I believe in the corporate discipline of worship. I also believe in how badly it can be abused. I also understand how rare it is for me to ever walk out of church and feel like light, like burdens lifted, inspired, compelled, um, being given life. Um, So don't hear me like all positivity over here, like, oh no, I just love church and everything. No, I don't actually love church. Like most of the time, I don't love church. But I think I would work to find. Now, listen, if evangelicalism someday decides they want to kick me out, which at this point I'm getting more and more optimistic, they may not. I didn't know if I believed that 5 or 10 years ago, but I think we're figuring out how to have a good conversation and how to coexist. Um, I'm a part of it. They are my family, and I may be a problem child, but they're embracing me. I think I'll be okay. I guess it kind of depends, Brian. If I was fired and kicked out of church, I don't know. I've always said that if I didn't feel called to the corner of evangelicalism that I was called to, I've always said like there are two extremes I would go to. I would either be like Anabaptist, Mennonite, Amish. I don't know what the Amish would do with the Jew. I don't know what they would do. Or I would go like Episcopalian. So those are my two extremes. Left to my own vices, that's where I would go. And I would go there because I love the radical commitment of the Anabaptists, those particular Anabaptist traditions, to live out something vibrant and real and authentic and to stand against consumerism and Hellenism. I love that. And I got to know it. That's not just abstract. I got to know a lot of them on my first trip to Israel. I traveled with 54 Amish believers, and it was an incredible experience. On the other hand, I love the high church liturgy. Um, uh, I love the progressive theology of the Episcopalian faith. So, um, I don't know. Would I gravitate there? What a good question, Brian. I'm going to keep thinking about that because I don't have a good answer tonight. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do. And I'm glad, I think, having like hearing your question now, I'm glad that I haven't had that situation. I'm glad that I've always been able to find a home within a faith community. And I have no I have no burning, like I can't get away from evangelicalism. Like they frustrate the daylights out of me, but I'm glad they're my family, dysfunctional as they may be. I'm glad they've made space for me, and I'll gladly continue to try to make space for them. Let's see here. How do you balance your time as a husband and a father with your role at Impact and as a teacher? Man, sometimes not well. What do you do when there are competing demands on your time? There are some. I try to fill all of that with boundaries and parameters, like some hard set stuff that I can't color outside of those lines. So Impact has a huge commitment to things like block scheduling. Um, like there are some boundaries and parameters that keep you from just getting like so out of control. Like the moment you start coloring outside of those lines, you're kind of forced within the world and the culture that we have here to start making adjustments. And I live in that tense space far more than I would like to, like right up against the boundaries, right up against the lines, right up against, I always feel like I'm always trying to pull back. And it's been years since I felt like I had space to like walk forward or lean in. And I hate that. So I don't always do it well. Um, but it's just constant. I don't think I have one answer for that. Like right now, I am going through this summer, like reevaluating. Because what happened was COVID has kind of like, we're getting done with COVID. I don't know what that means, but we're like moving into the next chapter. And so there's this thing in me that's making me feel like, well, I got to go produce. I have to. I've been sitting around for like a year and a half. Now I have to go. I have to like go, 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 go. And I'm catching myself as I'm starting to put my calendar together. That's no good. And luckily we have some conversations with other staff. It's not just me in a bubble. I have people that I work with, and we talk to each other about it. We hold each other accountable. And so I had one of those conversations Monday. That was yesterday. I had one of those conversations yesterday. And I'm probably going to have to go reevaluate my calendar, because what I was about to do with my calendar would be no good. So it's always, sometimes I can see it coming. Sometimes I like find myself like right in it, kind of like I do right now. Sometimes I didn't see it, and I'm like dealing like what's going on, and I realize like somewhere back there I got lost. But it's always, what do? I always make sacrifices. What are my priorities? Get rid of a lot of good things. And it's been years since I felt like I was doing bad things. Everything I do is good. Everything I do is worth my time. Everything I do is a positive investment. And I still can't do it all. And so for years now, it's been getting rid of good things. There's just good things. I have to get rid of this. And it's a good thing, but I still got to get rid of it because it's not as good as that. When it comes to family, like you asked me about husband and father, I have to start by planning that. I start by planning family. I don't plan family with my leftovers. I don't start with work and then add family to my calendar. I make sure that family has their place first, then I do my work calendar. And I've learned that just over time. Probably a million other things could be said. What's the next question? Did Han or I'm not answering that. I'm not answering who shot first. That's a lose-lose. I mean, there's a right answer. And I'll tell you privately, but I'm not doing that on a live stream Q&A. Come on now. There's no way. There's no way. I will tell you that the prequels have their place. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say that out loud. All right. The prequels have their place. Anyway. Okay. Enough. That's great. Okay. I'm going to jump over to, we got all the Slack questions. I'm going to slide over to all the people that pre-submitted their questions. Over to, I'm going over to Twitter. I think there's only one. I'm going to double check, but I think there's only one question over here on Twitter. Josh asks, he says, I was curious about the relation of Melchizedek in Genesis and Hebrews. I have a lot to learn, so I apologize if it's an extra broad question. It is, but I get it. Only on season 2 of the podcast. Loving it. Curious about the relation of Melchizedek and Genesis. Okay, let me start by just saying there's so much about Melchizedek is a broad topic. It's one that everybody, it feels like, wants to know more about because he's such a mysterious character. And it turns out there is a ton of tradition and a ton of midrash and a ton of things about Melchizedek and Jewish thought, let alone Christian thought. But as far as Jewish thought, a ton of just beautiful. And he like Melchizedek like finds himself weaving in and out of, like, he zigzags through the midrash and you bump into him in like the craziest places, and it's so cool. But I couldn't really speak intelligently about here's the stream of thought about Melchizedek. I will tell you that what Hebrews is doing is brilliant, in my opinion. The writer of Hebrews keeps wanting to pull Jesus into this world of temple ritual. But the problem with that is the temple is all Levitical. It's all Leviticus. It's all, you have to have a Levitical priesthood. But the writer wants to make Jesus a high priest. The writer wants to make Jesus the sacrifice. The writer wants to make Jesus the temple itself. Like, the writer keeps wanting to make Jesus the point. The problem is that Jesus isn't from the tribe of Levi, so Jesus can't be a priest. Jesus can't be all those things. And so the writer of Hebrews goes, oh, no. Like, the Levitical priesthood was for Leviticus. That was for the Sinai covenant for the Jewish people. But there was a priest long before Leviticus. There was a priest long before we had a tabernacle or a temple. There was a priest that was there to meet Abraham all the way back in the beginning. There was already a priest, some other order of priesthood that belonged to God. Who knows where it came from? Who knows where it was heading? But some pre-existent priesthood that predates, and the writer says that's the priesthood that Jesus belongs to. The order of Melchizedek. The order of Melchizedek. Not the Levitical order, not that system, but a system that predates, a system that maybe finds its home outside of, beyond. It uses like much more transcendent. It's a brilliant move to talk about the priesthood of Jesus. Be careful you don't take any of that too mechanically or too literally, but it's a brilliant move. And beyond that, I just have so much more learning to do. It's such a broad topic that the moment I start looking at it, my head starts to spin, and I just haven't devoted the time to do a deep dive on Melchizedek. Sounds like session 6 material, if you ask me. But I just haven't yet. Got to do some more learning on that. Oh, let's see here. Just wanting to make sure we don't have anything over on my account before I don't think so. Okay, I think we got all the Twitter ones taken care of. One more question from Twitter. Oh, yeah. Mike's question. Thank you, Brent. Man, Brent Billings is like a superhero. He's like a superhero. How to move beyond seeing God only as a God of limits, the God of fun hating, and the God of death. Yeah. How to move, and Mike and I have been chatting over email. So I know so much more of Mike's story. And so, Mike, what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer this question. I know he's on. I've seen him commenting in the chat here. I'm going to answer this question in a more broad way for a larger audience, but I know in so many ways that the way I'm going to answer this question is going to be completely inadequate for your perspective, your situation, your story, where you're coming from. I'm just going to say that right up front. How to move beyond seeing God as only the God of limits, the God of fun hating, and the God of death. If possible, find a new community. Oftentimes, the reason that we have that perspective of God is because it was handed to us by a system or a doctrinal perspective or a church or a certain expression of the faith. And we need to find a different expression. And maybe that expression had something really good. Maybe there was a gift in there that it gave us. In Mike's case, I'm not sure there was. But maybe there is a gift. Maybe there is something. But now it's time to you need to find a more robust, a more full. That was a pretty thin, incomplete sliver of, and it gave you a gift. And now it's time to go find, let me find that. I already, there we go. Let's see here. It's in the chat. I'm reading it again. How do we move from viewing God mainly as the God of death and limits, seeing that throughout the Bible, to viewing him as anything else? Community, I would say on maybe a more mystical level, get to know that God. Get to know that God. Because when you get to know him, you'll find out that's not who he is at all. The problem with many of us, and in Mike's case, I believe, is that it's really hard to get to know God when you are handed, like you're having to deconstruct and weed through so much garbage. And And so it's not easy to just get to know him. It's not easy to just spend time with him. Like, what does that look like? And our perspectives and our viewpoints are so damaged, it's hard to even understand what that would even look like, to even experiment with that, to even know where to begin. And you try. And so it's not an easy answer. That's not a quick fix. Um, but yeah, those would be the two things that I think would help me. And obviously, I went out and I found new voices. I know for many of you, that's how you talk about what the podcast means to you. I found spaces that helped me deconstruct. I found, I'll tell you what's helped me, a good therapist. Guys, I can't tell you like how much insight, how much growth and development. Like there's deconstruction and then there's like emotional reconstruction. Like I cannot tell you how much benefit I have experienced from a good counselor. Somebody who just listens to me talk and is like, "Well, that's pretty screwed up. Let me say that back to you and you tell me how that sounds." Oh, yeah. A counselor or a therapist that will tell me, "You should probably do this." I don't want to do that. Well, why? Why would you not want to do that? Like that's where I've probably done some of the most learning has been in good therapy. And it's helped me like almost all the garbage that I have between me and God, the thing that gets in the way of, that perspective I have about who God is and what God's doing and whatever. All of that usually comes from all the stuff that I'm bringing to the table, all the stuff that I'm projecting intentionally or unintentionally, all of that stuff. And when somebody just allows me, like helps me just go like, hey, you don't have to bring that. You don't have to project that. You don't have to answer that question. That urge is probably unhealthy. And not in like the moralistic church way. I'm talking about like good therapy. I'm talking about a therapist is like, that's not emotionally healthy for you to think that, for you to act like that, for you to make those decisions. And when I realized that, like, oh, well, it's like I took my spiritual glasses off and I cleaned the lenses and I went, oh, wow, look at that. Like, I didn't realize how dirty they were. Um, but yeah, it's been so helpful for me. So I give that to you. And the one thing that I would say, knowing a little bit of your story, Mike, um, is there's nothing that you have to like do. Like you don't got to figure all this stuff out. I know you want to. Who wouldn't? Um, but sometimes we like want to figure it out. So we're always trying to figure out if I just turn the dials the right way, if I just do this, if I just listen to that, if I and then like it will finally make this go away, or that will finally make sense, or this. Ah, ah, God just loves us, and obviously we would want to see that clearly. Obviously we would want to believe that. Obviously we would want to feel that. Obviously, I mean, obviously all the things, and yet try as hard as we will. At the end of it, God still he just goes, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I know your glasses are dirty. Yeah, I know you got baggage. That's not your fault. I don't hold it against you. You don't have to figure it out. I don't, you don't have to answer it. I'm not going to make you answer for that. That's not yours. Just let's hang out. It's just yeah, and you're right. Hillsong music doesn't do it for many. For many, for some of us it does. For many of us it doesn't. You're right. I'm glad it does for some. Doesn't for me. Some days it does. Boy, some days, whew. Doesn't for you? Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Cool. But I'm supposed to feel something with worship. Yeah. I don't know. Are you? Says who? Yeah, don't hold yourself under all this weight of whew. Okay, let's see here. What do we got? Where are we going next? We got Twitter, we got Slack. Instagram's out there. Let's go swing over to Facebook. Let's see what we got on Facebook. We're going to go to the first post that I posted. Let's see here. Oh, bother. There we go. Okay. Let's see here. We got our first question that came in. Can you speak into the differences and distinctions of Sheol and Gehenna? It's a good question. Sheol is a Hebrew word. The Hebrew word for the grave. And in the Hebrew mindset, they weren't impacted by Hellenism. They didn't have Greek Platonic thought. They didn't have, at the beginning, Greek constructs of the afterlife. You had some Egyptian influence. You had some understandings of an afterlife and different things, but it didn't have the construct that we're familiar with. And so what the Hebrews spoke of is they spoke of Sheol. And Sheol is what happens when you die. They put you in the ground. That's called the grave. And that place, that reality, that experience is called Sheol. It's just the grave. Where do good people go when they die? Sheol. Where do bad people go when they die? Sheol. Where do you put your body when you die? Sheol. Sheol is just the grave. And it's not a destination. It's not a place of reward or punishment or judgment. It's just the grave. Because the conversation that the Hebrews were having was a conversation about this life. They weren't having a conversation. They weren't having a Greek conversation about what happens when we die. They weren't talking about life after death. They were talking about life before death. That God would be a God of the living, not a God of the dead. That God is about the stuff that's happening in this world. That he wants us to participate in this reality, this world, this kingdom, this creation, this thing. And so that was it. So they just Sheol. I was at a teaching activity a few months ago in southern Idaho. I was there for a couple weeks teaching a bunch of classes. And one of the students, I loved her. She was so great. And she was so insistent. She just kept asking, where do we go when we die? And she was facetious towards the end. She was asking it repeatedly on purpose. And I just kept saying, I don't know. I don't know. Like we have some like general thoughts and ideas, but the Bible just really doesn't tell us. Like it doesn't spend hardly any time, even in the New Testament, telling us explaining how that all works. And we've constructed huge theologies off of like very simple, basic ideas, and we've drafted entire systems of thought of at the end of the day, we just don't know. And I haven't been there, and neither have you. So I don't know. I don't know what happens when we die. And then like the next day we got to class and she was like, so what happens when we die? And I was like, I thought about it all night and I didn't come up with any better answers. I just don't know. I don't know. What I do know is that God's inviting us to be a part of something in this world, in this existence, in this like life before death. The Bible has thousands of pages of material on. Life after death, it doesn't really have that much material. I'm not saying none. I mean, and the stuff that it does have is really broad and poetic and general and unspecific and apocalyptic and I don't know. But that's Sheol. Then there's Gehenna, and Gehenna is a Greek borrowed word. So Gehenna is a word that comes from a Hebrew expression. The Hebrew expression is Gehenom, the valley of Hinnom. Or in like the book of Jeremiah, you will read about the valley of Ben Hinnom, the valley of Ben Hinnom. So the Gehenom, the valley of Hinnom, Gehenna is a borrowed Greek word that references that Hebrew expression of Gehenom. Gehenna is the valley. There's a valley, the valley of Hinnom, right outside of Jerusalem. It is where Jerusalem would have had its sewage dump, its trash heap. And I know that Francis Chan has said there's no scholarship to back that up. It's because there's a big residential district there in Jerusalem, so nobody has done archaeological digs to dig up the sewer. He was accurate. That's correct. There hasn't been a whole lot of archaeological digs to find the trash dump. but there's a huge residential district in the Valley of Ben Hinnom now. Houses all over the place. And they will do some pretty cool things to dig up David's palace or to dig like under the Temple Mount, or like they do some pretty incredible things in archaeology, but nobody is like trying to dig under a residential district to find the sewage dump. But that is what Gehenna speaks to in a literal sense. Now, it only, like, the word Gehenna only shows up 12 times in the New Testament. 11 times it's used by Jesus. And Jesus is almost always using it as a prophetic picture or a callback to the prophet of Jeremiah, or like he's almost never speaking about the literal place of Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom. He's not speaking of the literal trash dump, but he's using the trash dump as a metaphor. And the great conversation is going to rage. The debate is going to rage about whether or not that still has implications for eternal destinies, theology surrounding hell. I'm not going to try to settle that here on a live stream on YouTube, but that's where the theological debate swirls. In the way that Jesus uses that, is there a theology of hell? Do we have enough to construct a theology about hell? Is there not enough to not have a theology of hell? Is it okay to say, well, there's nothing going on there? That's the great debate there. But that's the difference between Sheol and Gehenna. Sheol is just the grave. Gehenna is an actual trash dump outside of Jerusalem that will often get used in Jewish, not just Jesus. It's also in the Midrash. It's also in apocryphal literature. It gets used to speak of judgment in a more allegorical, metaphorical sense. Is there a literal judgment that it's speaking about? I'll let you all wrestle with that for now. Or is there a greater metaphor that's trying to say something else? There you go. Sheol, Gehenna. Good question. I'm sliding over to the next post. Ooh, this one's got a lot of questions. Ooh, I think after this, are we done? And then I can go to the YouTube chat. Can I do that? Is that what's happening? Oh, so many more things have come in. So good. Oh, so many more names that I enjoy. Oh, hooray. Let's see here. Oh, I do have more books than before. Not necessarily in this photo frame, Ben, but I've gotten a lot of books. I had to actually get 3 libraries when I moved into this new house because somebody gave me their library, which tripled the size of the one that I had. So now I have 3 rooms that each have a set of bookshelves. Excuse me, like that. All right, let's see here. How did Jesus become a rabbi? Was John the Baptist his rabbi? Let me put on, I need to not filter these. I'm going all comments. Okay. How did Jesus become a rabbi? Was John the Baptist his rabbi? I believe so. A lot of people hate that idea. It's okay. You can hate it. You can totally think I'm crazy. I thought my teacher was crazy when Ray said that's what he thought. And for the first couple of years, I thought he was absolutely nuts. That was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard of. And then the more I looked at it, and then the more I learned of the scholarship surrounding, I was like, oh gosh, I think he was. And the more I've studied it, the more I agree. I think John the Baptist was Jesus' rabbi. You say, why would that be? John the Baptist is only 6 months older than Jesus. He's a contemporary. He's a peer. He's a colleague. Yes. The problem would be Jesus's birth. His birth is going to be viewed as illegitimate in that ancient Jewish world. He's going to be a mumser, a mamzer. He's going to be a bastard child. Because nobody's believing the virgin birth story. Like maybe some fanatics believe it. Maybe family believes it. Maybe. But nobody's believing that. So you're not like, oh, well, mine's a virgin birth. And you're like, well, that's a pure lineage. Nobody's believing that. And so you have this illegitimacy to his, either he, Ben Casperson killing me over there with those comments. But you have this, you have this mumser. And so there's a scholar out there, Bruce Chilton, who says he believes Jesus would never have been accepted into, he wouldn't have been accepted into the regular school system, the regular education. He wouldn't have gone through the regular steps. He might have gone through some of the first initial Bet Sefer, but there's no rabbi that's accepting this rogue illegitimate birth story, Jesus from Nazareth. Like, no way. And I agree. And so I think John the Baptist, who's also kind of a rogue, kind of like, don't follow the rules, got raised by a bunch of Essenes. I think he's like, hey, let's start the family business. We're called by God. I got a calling. You got a calling. Let's do this thing. And this whole thing is kind of birthed, no pun intended, out of this really rogue. What expression am I trying to say? It's not the normal. This is not how it normally goes. John the Baptist wouldn't normally be Jesus' rabbi, and yet there's nothing normal about Jesus, and there's nothing normal about John, and there's nothing normal about this thing, which is why nobody can figure it out. Everywhere that people go, they're like, who is this guy? Where does he get his authority? Where did he go to school? And who is John? And is this not the carpenter's son? Like, we know the carpenter's son, and he didn't go to school, so how does he know all this? So yes, I do. I believe that Jesus became a rabbi informally. It was an informal thing already. Official rabbis did not exist until the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. That's when capital R rabbis became a thing. So all rabbis are it's an informal, like cultural, colloquial term. Teacher. He's a teacher. He's good at teaching. It'd be like Marty. Marty's a teacher. But Marty doesn't have a PhD. Marty doesn't have a degree hanging on his wall. But he's a teacher. That's the kind of like, so that's what a rabbi was. He's a teacher in their world. Unbelievably revered, honored, respected, but just a teacher. So how did he become one? I think John the Baptist was his rabbi. I think he got, again, rogue, informal, unusual authority when he showed up for his baptism, and John the Baptist said, this is the guy. I'm not even worthy to untie his sandals. And then, like, I can't baptize you. What are you doing? And Jesus is like, please help me do this. So John baptizes him. And then a voice comes from heaven and says, this is my son, whom I love, and him I'm well pleased. That's pretty good authority. Like, in order to have shmicha, that's the term for authority. In order to have shmicha, you have to have two rabbis that have shmicha agree in public that you have shmicha. Well, John the Baptist and God, that's a pretty good pedigree. It's pretty informal. It's pretty like not follow the rules, but that's pretty good. Like, those are two pretty good names to have at the bottom of your ordination certificate. I'm being facetious, but you get the point. Would people try to be rabbis without authority back then? People would try, but that would be the question. And that's the thing that's so weird about Jesus and John, but let's just talk about Jesus. Jesus is so good with his text. Jesus is so brilliant with his wisdom. It's undeniable. And I don't think that would have typically happened with somebody just like wanting, well, I want to be a rabbi. Okay. And I want to be LeBron James. And, I ain't going to go win any playoff games either. Just kidding. But I'm not going to, I can't do that. And yet this Jesus person is like, okay, but this guy's clearly got the goods, like unlike anybody we've ever seen. And so that's what sets him apart. Could people try to be a rabbi without authority? Sure. Although if you tried to offer a new interpretation, you'd be run out of town, kicked out of synagogue, shunned by the crowds. Because you have to have shmicha to do that. So you could only do so much if you were going to stay in the community and be engaged. You would have to play by the rules, because if you ever stepped outside those, well, you'd be chased out of town, quite literally. So it's possible. But anyway, let's see here. Hi, Marty. I'm halfway through the Bema podcast, and already it's completely transformed how I interact with biblical text. Thank you and the entire team for your faithfulness. Can you share your insight into Proverbs 13:21, specifically the rod? I've recently heard this being explained as similar to the shepherd's staff as opposed to a staff for striking, and wanted to get your thoughts. Recently listened to She Giggled. So good. Thank you. Absolutely, Danielle. I'm assuming, I'm going to go look right now. I'm assuming that Proverbs 13:21 is the proverb about not sparing the rod in reference to children, because then they'll walk in the ways of the Lord. Let me go check Proverbs 13:21. I'm going to swing over. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm swinging over to my Blue Letter Bible app. I'm going over to Proverbs 13. I'm going to go down to 21. Oh, well, that doesn't seem right. Hold on. Proverbs 13:21. I don't know, Danielle, if that's a typo. Proverbs 13:21 says, "Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid." Oh, I think maybe you meant Proverbs 13:24. "He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes." I'm reading out of the King James, obviously. There's a reference to the rod. I'm going to go to rod here and see what the word is. So I click on the concordance. I swing on down to the word for rod. And it's going to be savet. Shows up in Exodus 4, take his rod in his hand. It's the same as the staff. Yeah, it's going to be the same word. That was what I was wanting to check. The same word as rod used for shepherding. So it is the same word. I don't know why this is not working. There it is. Okay. Rod, staff, branch, offshoot, club, scepter, tribe. Scepters, rods. It is the same word. So we could make some general observations that it's the same idea. I don't know if I would feel hermeneutically, homiletically comfortable making the leap that what the proverb is saying is about leadership, but I also like the idea. I'd have to marinate on that some more. Not sparing the rod. I don't believe that the proverb is saying beat your kids because then it will work. And you're correct. That's not how it worked for shepherds. The shepherd hardly ever touches the sheep with the rod. In fact, the rod is most often used for assisting the shepherd and protecting the sheep. But it's hardly ever used to touch the sheep, prod the sheep, beat the sheep. No way. So, is the proverb talking about a shepherd's rod and that imagery with parenting? I want to have a pause before I make that leap. General principles, yes. Yeah, general principles, I think you're on the right track. Is the proverb saying don't spare the rod, like protect your kids? I don't know if that's what the proverb is saying. Lead your kids well, lead them, guide them, shepherd them. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I like that. I like that question. And I like that idea. So yeah, it's a good question, Danielle. Oh, let's see here. So many questions. Let's see here. Cece says our Hickson Bay Ma group is in the intro material to session 3. Oh, some of my absolute favorite. Last night we were talking about how the Herodians and Pharisees were questioning Jesus about paying taxes to Caesar. Why did they choose this topic? Was it about Caesar and taxes? What is it about Caesar and taxes that could bring a Pharisee and Herodian to agreement against Jesus? I will tell you that we will cover that in session 3. So just keep on listening because you're about ready to get there. We're going to go through every single verse of Matthew. Now, what I will say is it is astounding that the Pharisees and the Herodians work together because they're competing worldviews. They see the world completely differently. And so I don't know what kind of agreement they had, if they even had a formal agreement when they came and approached Jesus. What I can tell you is that it looked like a lose-lose for Jesus. No matter how he answers this question, he's going to make one of the sides upset because they have completely opposite worldviews. This group thinks one thing, this group thinks the opposite. So if he says on this side, this group will be happy, but this group will hate him. If he says on this side, the opposite. And what Jesus does is he says something that both sides are equally going to agree with and be challenged by. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to let you get there in session 3 because it's a good episode. I like that teaching. It's a great question. CC also asks, is there a difference in a Messianic Jew and a Christian Jew? Not necessarily directly. I will say that I've often made a distinction, and I was really confident in that distinction. And in the last year or two, I've become less and less confident in that distinction, which is funny. The more you meet people, the more you are exposed to more of humanity, the more you have to question assumptions, the more that you stop thinking what you used to think, the more that you grow, the more that you change. And I would say, like, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, that I had spent a decade interacting with Messianic Jews only, and it really was the same experience over and over again, and it was always different groups, some different contexts, but I always had the same, and all I can tell you is that's whatever that was, it's not what I was doing. It's not what I am doing. We were not reading the Bible the same way. There were some real key distinctions. And so I always made a distinction between how I view myself and what I see myself doing. It's not a critique. We have a lot of Messianic Jewish listeners to the podcast and on my YouTube channel and everything else. I love them. It's beautiful, and I just value what they're doing with their faith. That's great. But it was different than what I was doing with my faith. And so I would always call myself just a Jewish follower of Jesus. Just a Jewish follower of Jesus. And I think you said Christian Jew, or and then I had last year, 2 years ago, I had a professor from Fuller Seminary reach out to me, and she's a Messianic Jew, married to a Messianic Jewish husband, and professor of Jewish studies, and she said, I want to invite you into this space of Jewish disciples that are following Jesus, and they're in all different corners of Christendom. There's Catholics, and there's Eastern Orthodox, and there's mainline denominational, there's Lutherans and Presbyterians, and there's non-denominationals, and there's Catholics, and there's Messianics, and there's all these Jewish believers that find themselves in all kinds of different contexts. And what it did was it opened my mind to the fact that there may be some general principles and there might be some general broad strokes that are accurate here and there, but humanity is always a complex thing. And you can't fit it into nice categories. So is there a difference? Sure. Usually. And yet labels are only so helpful, and they are helpful to a point. Labels are helpful, but only to a point, and we usually misuse them. We usually overuse them. And so I don't really, I've overused those labels. I've started meeting some Messianic Jews that are like, they're not what I had experienced before. It's crazy. It's cool. And I've met people that I would have identified with that drive me crazy. So that's humanity. And that's what I'm learning. And I don't know if I have great conclusive thoughts on that yet. Yeah, we're about an hour into this thing. Let's keep moving. Ron Stamper says, Marty, if you came to my house and I really wanted to serve you and I had a special dish that had bacon, please, if you're going to do this, don't do it with bacon. Like, I really don't care about bacon. Bacon's not that big of a deal. I know I'm going to upset lots of people. What I miss is shrimp, guys. Shellfish. Oh my gosh. what I would do for a lobster tail and a plate full of shrimp. Oh, come on now. Whew! That is what I miss. So please, if you're gonna screw up a dish and make it unkosher, for me, don't do it with bacon. Don't waste that opportunity with bacon. Do it with shrimp. This is all a joke. Like, please don't make my dish unkosher. But if you're going to, do it with the good stuff. Um, he says, if I wanted to serve you and I had a special dish that had bacon in it, and you knew that I wanted to serve you out of love, and you decided to eat it, just like we talked about in session 4. And if you're like, oh my goodness, what are you even talking about? Don't worry, you'll get to it in session 4. Just hang in there. We're going to talk all about a pint of bacon, and how Brent's going to eat that pint of bacon, and I'm not. We're going to talk about why. But one of the things I talked about in that teaching was, if somebody doesn't know that about me, and I'm at their house and they go and they've made me dinner and they don't know, they're not doing it to test me. They simply didn't know. And so they put bacon or they put shrimp in the dish, and they go to serve it to me. I'm gonna eat it. I'm not gonna push them away and be like, sorry, I don't eat bacon. No, no, no. I'm gonna embrace the relationship. I'm gonna I'm going to enjoy the fellowship. I'm going to honor the hospitality. I'm going to respect the generosity. I'm going to accept the love, and I'm going to eat the dish. I think Paul says, whatever people put in front of you, eat it without raising questions of conscience. I do believe Paul ate kosher. And yet he was like, listen, relationship is more important than ritual purity. And in that teaching, I said, if I did eat it, I would still observe ritual purity. I would still be unclean for the rest of the night. I would eat the dish and I wouldn't say anything. I would just internally know I was unclean. And Torah says I'm unclean for until sundown. So I would be unclean until the sun went down. So to finish Ron's question, I'm curious, is there anything special that you would have to do to cleanse yourself? Not that I'm watching or anything, but I was just curious. Is there anything I would do to cleanse myself at the end of and I'm unclean all the time. Like, it just happens all the time. Um, I'm resurfacing our deck, and so I'm all around bugs, like dead bugs. Well, all those things are unclean. So I'm unclean until sundown. My wife is unclean once a month for a week. I'll let you figure out why. It's uncleanliness happens to all of us all the time. Uncleanliness is not sinfulness. Sinfulness and cleanliness law is two completely separate things. To break cleanliness law would be a sin, but to just be unclean, and I'll make the case in session 3, I think Jesus was unclean because there's nothing sinful about being unclean. I think Jesus, when he touched lepers, was unclean. I'm told in the Gospel of John, right after he spends time with Lazarus and a leper colony, it's 6 days later he goes to Jerusalem. Why 6 days later? Because that's when he's clean again. He can't go into Jerusalem until he allows himself the period of cleanliness for being around lepers. So there's nothing sinful about that. So Ron's saying, I'll say, so according to Torah, if I'm unclean, I'm unclean until sundown. And so at the end of that day, what I would do is I would just perform mikvah. Ron, that's how it's what I believe they did, how they understood it. And there would be a mikvah washing that I would do. It's not a full like immersion bath or anything like that. For a lot of women, they do. A lot of women in modern Judaism today have turned the post nidah, which is their time of menstrual uncleanliness, the post nidah mikvah. They've actually turned that into a full ritualistic bath, which is a beautiful practice. But mikvah doesn't have to be that. I didn't do that last night when I got done working on the deck. Simply, I do mikvah, I take some water, I put it on my head. I say, God, would you renew and cleanse my thoughts? Because I want my thoughts to be your thoughts. Would you renew and cleanse my heart? Because I want my desires. I want to want the things that you want. Would you cleanse my hands, that I would do the things that you have for me? And would you renew and cleanse my feet, because I want to walk in your ways? And it's just a moment. It's just a passing cleansing. It's the kind of washing that the Pharisees are mad at Jesus for not doing before he eats. Anyway, so many more things to talk about with that. It's a great question, Ron. So that's that. Let's see here. Is there anything else that oh, Instagram. Hello. There were some great questions on Instagram. Forgot about that. Where are we doing? 5 after? Whew. Yep. All right, we're going to slide on over here to Instagram. We're going to grab this. What is going on here? Okay, here we go. We're going to grab our questions. I recently heard Genesis 9:6 as a defense for the death penalty, and they pointed to other Levitical law. This doesn't sit well with me. I'm pro-life, womb to tomb, and in my beliefs, I believe this person is using that verse out of context, the Hebrew context. Yeah, we love Christians love to take Torah when it's convenient, when it has a verse that supports what they want to practice, and then they reject everything else. So the same person that wants to use that as capital punishment, I'm sure probably does enjoy their bacon, probably doesn't eat kosher. So we're often inconsistent in the way that we use Levitical law. So we want to be consistent in the way we observe it and apply it. That's just good hermeneutics. And so, yeah, and there's a debate about capital punishment. What's interesting about Levitical law and capital punishment is, again, what I said at the very top of this live stream, the very first question, what makes Torah unique? I said that Torah doesn't teach you what to think. Torah teaches you how to think. And so what's interesting is that God gave all these laws that ended with capital punishment. And Jewish scholarship says they very rarely, like hardly ever, pursued capital punishment. It was unbelievably rare. Even though the law said, what the law was doing was not telling you what to think and what to do. The law was telling you how to think. And so they also had all these other laws. Like all you can do is focus on that one law, but they also have all kinds of other laws about loving your neighbor as yourself, laws about forgiveness, laws about atonement, laws about all those things. And so they usually end up, and what these laws are doing is they are teaching you about the severity of a practice, the severity of an offense, like you're supposed to stone a rebellious son. So is that? Are we going to use that verse to say that we're supposed to be using capital punishment? Of course not. And so we have to be consistent. And what Torah does is Torah teaches us how to think, not what to think, how to think, not what to do, but how to think so that you know what to do, how to discern, how to rule, how to judge. That's what Torah does. And so, yeah, and a great book on this. Shane Claiborne wrote a book, Executing Grace. Executing Grace. I don't recommend it often because it's such a touchy subject and everybody gets worked up about it. But yeah, Executing Grace by Shane Claiborne. Great book on the death penalty and how we probably need to get rid of it. It would seem like the consistent thing to do for a pro-life perspective. But nevertheless, talk about your input and insights with the series of The Chosen. I was pleased to see in session 2 the screenplay referencing the 2 rabbinical prongs being debated by the actors portraying the Pharisees. I just watched that episode. So good. Yeah, so all I'm going to say is that in session 6, you got to keep listening because in session 6, Brent and I are doing an episode by episode commentary. We are wrapping up season 1 right now. There may be some kind of special guest at the end of this. I don't know. There could be a special guest at the end of our commentary. I don't know. We'll have to find out. And we're spending some time just doing that. I'm assuming we're going to go through season 2 and we'll kind of add our comment because it's a ton of fun to talk about. And I've just been like, I literally said out loud to my wife last night, we were watching, or maybe it was 2 nights ago, we were watching that episode. And I went, I can't believe that this is in here. Like I just can't believe it is so easy to make what I call B- crap when it comes to Christian art. Like, it's so easy to just throw something that gets the job done together and not do your homework. And they've just whoever is doing it all, whatever crew they have doing their homework, whatever academics they have helping them be aware, man, they're doing just some fantastic work. That's not to say I love um, every single uh, nuance and detail I've seen in the series, but I love it, love it, love it, love it. So it's coming. Just keep on listening. Once you get to session 6, it's only like 220 episodes in, but we're going to do an episode by episode commentary, and you can hear us talk about that question until you're blue in the face. Student summer Christian camps. Oh, I love this question. How would you address the issue of modesty if the camp is mixed gender environment as well as a mixture of believing and unbelieving students? Oh man. Christian summer camps. Whoo! I can remember I used to lead. I was the director for a high school, junior high and high school summer camp for years when I was at the very beginning of my ministry. And I can remember, like, this was the issue that I always had consistent throwdowns with camp staff with, was this issue of modesty and how we held it and enforced it and the posturing we used. And at the end of the day, I don't have a great answer for your question because I'm no longer a camp director and I don't have to have a question for this because in a lot of ways, I don't know what I would do. Because there are some real practical realities to the need for some decorum, some dress code, like even public school systems, like duh, I'm not arguing against that. However, what we have done with modesty and purity culture in the Christian world has been so unbelievably destructive, and so unbelievably hurtful, and so unbelievably inconsistent. It's just bad. So I don't know. I don't know what I would do at a summer camp uh, about modesty. I just know that the whole thing makes my tummy hurt. Um, the way that we always try to control people and their behavior, and we don't see people. I think that is what disturbs me the most. Not just with summer camps, like just Christian morality. It's just about like some weird behavior modification code. And like considering the fact that these are human beings is always secondary, if that. If that. Like we don't see whole human beings. We don't see their bodies and their spiritualities and their emotional realities and their psychological well-being, and we just want people to like follow the rules of righteousness. And that listen to me. I'm not saying like throw all the rules out and just have a free for all. Nope. I'm saying that we've gotten the whole priorities out of whack. And we don't see the problem correctly. Like we're trying to like fix all the symptoms rather than address the causes. I don't even know if that comes out right, but holy smokes. It's just so disturbing the way that we pursue. So I don't know. That's a total cop out. Sorry about that. Collins Ice Baby. That's their handle name. Because I'm totally copping out of that question. But I love that question. And there's about 40 minutes worth of ranting that I want to do right there. Gets to my Song of Songs episode. Hey, Marty, what church are you a part of? And is your church located only in the U.S.? I don't know if the second part is about denomination. Because I have a church, a local fellowship, and it is in the U.S. because that's where I live. It's in Cincinnati. And I'm a part of a congregation called University Christian Church. It is a part of the non-denominational Stone Campbell Restoration Movement churches, usually known as the independent Christian churches, Churches of Christ. I'm from that tradition, that brotherhood. There is no denomination. Those churches are found everywhere around the globe. But there's no headquarters and no system of whatever that leads those things. They're all independent and autonomous. So it's non-denominational. My particular congregation is very progressive. I love that about them. It's very unusual for our brotherhood. We don't usually have those perspectives or those expressions, but it's been a very healthy place for me to be after just being so frustrated by our corner of evangelicalism for years and years. And it's been really good to be a part of it. So hope it doesn't offend anybody. I'm just answering questions. What's next? Let's see here. How do we address uncomfortable issues with the church while removing them from their cultural taboo? For instance, diversity is a beautiful concept, especially as we make disciples of all nations. But for many believers I've talked to, they're uncomfortable talking about diversity in the kingdom because of the way our post-Christian world talks about, because the way they talk about it makes them feel like they shouldn't be a part of the conversation at all. It's not just the diversity topic, but other topics that are heavily politicized, polarizing in the world as well. Yeah. That's a great question. And if I had an easy answer to this question, boy, I'd write all the books and we just fix the world. Because this is not going to be an easy question to answer. Because what's happened is we have all bought into tribal identity politics, identity, spirituality. What team am I on? What worldview do I cling to? Whatever. This is the brand. This is the tribe. This is my group. This is whatever. And we're going to have to, if we're ever going to address your question, we're going to have to find a way to deconstruct those things. It's so anti-New Testament. It's so wrong. It's so like we read the letter to the Corinthian church and we're like, what a bunch of idiots. Listen, the Corinthian church has nothing on us. We're so unbelievably arrogant, divided. Good grief. Corinthian church, they got nothing on us. So, I mean, that's going to be, we got some deep-seated idolatry too. For any of you that are caught up to session 6, we did one episode where we had a guest, a Black woman, join us on session 6 just to share her story. And I'm not going to stop talking about this. I don't care. You're like, you shared the story last time, Marty. I don't care. Because it's so important to me. And all we did was let her share her story. And I just wanted to listen. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's scandalous. I don't think that's liberal. I don't think that's picking a side. All I wanted to do was just listen to her share her story and show empathy. That's all I wanted to do. And when she was done, I don't believe I made big political statements. I don't believe I made grand accusations or sweeping. All I did was me personally, Marty Solomon, apologized for things that I believe I could do better. And I didn't even put that on Brent or anybody else. And I got more hate mail. Hate mail is a strong word. I got more negative mail in the 7 days that followed that episode than I have gotten in my entire career. And that's not an exaggeration. It's not even close. I don't even have to think about, is that accurate? No, that's accurate. In 7 days, more negative email, negative messages, negative. But apparently we don't have a problem, right? I've talked about Revelation. I've screwed with people's eschatology. I've questioned the existence of hell. I had a Black woman share her story and people lost their mind. That's nuts. We have some deep-seated idolatry issues. And I'm not even calling it racism right now. I'm just saying deep-seated idolatry. So there's that. And I'm probably not helping you out. Let me go back to your question. But just to affirm what you're talking about. Um, a lot of believers I've talked to are uncomfortable talking about diversity in the kingdom because the way our post-Christian world, yes, we've been in a post-Christian world since the French Revolution. I know none of us want to admit that. I know we only, especially as American Christians, we only want to be winners. I don't know what we do with all the teaching about Jesus, telling us like the first will be last and the last will be first. I don't know what we're doing with that because American Christians only want to win. Um, and it's so upside down. It's so anti-kingdom. But we've been in a post-Christian world for a long time. Yeah. And we've decided that it's a big culture war. So whatever the world does is always bad. Whatever the world does is always bad. And we always have to fight against it. And here's what the post-Christian world, I said it started at the French Revolution. But it was a Christian world for a good 1,600 years. For a good 1,600 years, it was a Christian world. So I wonder where the world learned all these values. Because it's kind of a new thing when you look at the last 2,000-3,000 years of human history. Where did the world learn this commitment to inclusivity? Where did the world learn? And yes, maybe there's a lot of things that we need to think critically about. Yes, maybe there's a whole lot of things that are overcorrected and we need to, but there's so much to be celebrated because I believe what the world is doing is rooted in a world that was impacted in so many negative ways by Christianity, but also impacted in some real positive ways because of a Christian world for 1,600 years. The understanding of recognizing people's humanity, forgiveness, loving your enemy, loving others, belonging, acceptance. Where did we learn that? And now we're fighting against it simply because the world like co-opts it. And half the time, I'm not even sure they're even co-opting it that much. And we're now rejecting the very things we were supposed to be celebrating. I just don't. You got me fired up with this question. Who asked this question? Who asked this question? Oh yeah, Foreigners and Strangers podcast. I'm not answering your question at all. I'm just joining you in a rant. How about that? Is that okay? I'm just going to join you in a rant because I don't know how we're going to fix it. But yes to all those things, and we have identified the wrong enemy. We've identified the wrong enemy. We're fighting the wrong fights. All right, I've done all the man, those are some good questions. Got me all fired up. Which is probably not good. It's late. It's going on 9:30. Let me just scroll through our YouTube chat. Oh, Magnolia, it's okay. I mean, me too. Yeah. I'll be first in line. Please don't. I don't like to call people out. It makes me uncomfortable, but hopefully it's a good kind. Hopefully the Holy Spirit, man. Let's see here. With limitless grace comes limitless responsibility to respond to grace. Yeah. Absolutely. So everyone races to the back of the line during dinner and calls it even. Yeah. It is a weird practical application. Absolutely. And yet there is some sense of communal insistence of, no, you belong up here. The weak, the marginalized, the mistreated. The community does. It's like the synagogue. that ancient synagogue where everybody would gather around and they'd find the people with gray hair and they would say, "You sit in the chief seats." And everybody would be like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't deserve the chief seats. It's not me. That's for everybody else, but I'm not. No, no, no. Don't give me the chief seats." And the whole community would gather around and say, "No. No, today we as a community say to you, it's time to sit in the chief seats." So yeah. When you're at the potluck and the kingdom economy says, "Well, we all just race to the back of the line and we all like do this." Yeah, but there are people. There is a man that has sat at a pool for 38 years and had nobody to help him in. And he didn't race to the back. I'm sorry, I'm going to get worked up. He did not race to the back of the line. He has never been able to. He's never been able to get to the front or the back. And we should live in an economy that says, no, you get up front and I'll hold you. There are people that that need to be in the front of the line, and the community says, "No, you get up here," because this is what kingdom looks like. And if I would be so bold, and I'll get emails for this, I'm sure. But if I would be so bold, I think there's probably a whole lot of white men that do need to race to the back of the line, myself included. We need to help everybody else because we've just been living it up at the front of the line. We've been owning the front of the line. And we've been scarfing down the potluck. And I know that it wasn't me or you that did it for years and years and years. And I know that we weren't. How could we be responsible? But we're present for the injustice now. Whether we're responsible or not, we're present for the injustice now. I like that. Opens email and starts composing. Oh gosh, I love humor and levity that allows me to come back to reality. What are your thoughts on good tree, good fruit, bad fruit? How does sin work in this tree situation? Is it true Christian? If it is a true Christian messing up, you'll hear me talk on that in session 3. I'll speak directly to good tree, bad fruit. I wish we would make a bigger deal of that teaching. I think maybe what I'm hearing you ask here, last November, in your question, is about like the fruit that we produce in our lives, like a Christian producing bad fruit. And that is very directly exactly what Paul is talking about in Galatians. When he talks about the fruit of the Spirit, Paul is saying we need to know how to walk in the Spirit. And how do I know if I'm walking in the Spirit? And Paul says, well, you look at the fruit of your life, because the fruits of the flesh are obvious, Paul says. It's debauchery and fits of rage and division and all kinds of malice and anger. Like if that's what's coming out of you, then I promise you're not walking in the Spirit. But if you've got love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness, if that's what comes out of you, if that's what exudes out of you, and nobody's perfect, I'm not saying that, but I can honestly say that as I've grown in Christ, like that fruit of the Spirit is what is typically born out of my walk. It's not arrogance. That's just me having a healthy understanding of what Christ does in my life. I'm not perfect. I fail all the time. I sin all the time. But the fruit that's generally born out of my life is good fruit from a good tree. And that's what tells me that I'm walking in step with the Spirit. And when I don't have that, when I don't have patience, when I don't have any joy, when I don't have love, and I'm not being gentle, and I can't be faithful, and I have no self-control, I need to figure out how to get back in sync with the Spirit and walk in righteousness, because there's something horribly off with that. Could you please give a biblical definition of grace? Man, my Bible college days just go unmerited favor. Unmerited favor. Grace. And I don't think unmerited favor is a bad definition. Unmerited favor, grace, compassion. the gift. I think the Jewish mind connects it to the idea of chesed. Not every time, not all the time, but typically the Jewish mind, I think, would take grace and connect it with chesed, which is loving kindness. It's like mercy and compassion and love and goodness all wrapped into a reality. Grace. It's unmerited favor. It's trusting the story. It's grace. You would take a long time to build a house if you tried to avoid uncleanliness. Oh, you're telling me. You're telling me. I would also not be good at building a house at all. What are the implications of being unclean? I think we spoke to that. Basically, maybe we did speak to that. Being unclean means I'm not going to touch my family members because then they become unclean. Being unclean means I can't touch any utensil that has food. If it's disposable, I have to throw it away at the end of the night because now everything in it is unclean. So if I touch a gallon of milk and I'm unclean, I have to throw the whole gallon of milk away at the end of the evening. If it's if it's a non-disposable container, if it's in a bowl, I have to empty the bowl out and wash the container at the end of the night. So you could waste a whole bunch of food. There's all kinds of things that you wouldn't engage in because you're unclean. If we lived in a world where there was a temple, you wouldn't go to temple. You would obviously not go out in public. You would cancel your plans to go out with the boys that evening because you would make everyone else unclean. And then they all have to share in that with you. And part of what uncleanliness does is it teaches you what whole relationship looks like. It teaches you what it looks like when relationship is broken. It teaches you all kinds of things. I got to tell you, when my wife is unclean once a month for a week, for 7 days, and I'm the one that has to make all the meals and get her coffee because she can't touch the creamer, and she can't touch the coffee container, and she can't get the kids, food ready because then it and you have to like separate your week's meals out. There's like all this extra work that goes into, and it does things good and bad. It's frustrating. It's endearing. It's all the things, and that's why everybody takes a turn doing it. Yeah. Shrimp is completely overrated. I'm about ready to boot you right out of this YouTube live stream. Block. Always the bacon. Yes, I eat the bacon. I'm going backwards if you guys can't tell. So next time you're in Alaska, should I forget with the crab? I mean, you could. I think you know better, Benjamin, but you could. I mean, you could forget. You could forget about it. Put it right in there. This is Samuel from the Okie Dokimos podcast. If you wanted to hear when I was on the podcast with the Okie Dokimos folks, you can swing over to martysolomon.com, and there's one of the sections there is appearances, and click on appearances, and it will have the podcasts and sermons that I've done, different things like that. And I think third from the top is going to be the Okie Dokimos podcast. You go listen to the conversation we had just I don't know, a month or two ago. Great time. This is my backpacking YouTube channel name. So good to hear your live stream. What's been one of your favorite reads currently? Woo! Currently, I think my last favorite read was Understanding the Jewish Roots of Christianity, and it was edited by Gerald McDermott. And it's a collection of academic essays by lots of different, maybe not necessarily big name scholars, but academic scholars that were all contributing to and using their research to talk about the Jewish roots of Christianity. It was a great book. I'm going to be, I think, spending some time in session 6 talking about its contents. So stay tuned. I understand you'll be visiting Christ Fellowship in Kingsport, Tennessee. You betcha I will. September of 2021. Looking forward to meeting you. I'm looking forward to meeting you, Scott Jones. Yeah, it's going to be great. I love it. It seems as if the show has listened to Marty Bema. You wonder at times, but then I don't wonder for very long because that seems really arrogant. There's a whole lot of people that have talked about all this stuff long before I did. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I think we talked about the chosen stuff. Great to see you live. Buy it for the footnotes. Which one? Oh, Robert Alter's translation is gorgeous and amazing. So yes, if anybody has 70 or 80 bucks or 60 bucks if you find it on sale, Robert Alter did a translation of Tanakh, the whole Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, from Genesis, Torah, prophets, and writings. And it's A, gorgeously packaged, and B, he's so good, and his footnotes are so good. So I'll double down on that recommendation right there. Yep. My piece on that same story, insignificance to going down to the valley to kill them, seems like quite the hassle to take them down the mountain. I think that's in reference to Tara's question, that Elijah's story when they kill the prophets of Baal. Do you think Elijah should not have done that, or the Jewish thought on that? Because God never said that. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of room. That is quintessential Elijah. He was not instructed to do that by God. God also didn't rebuke him. God just kind of remained silent, but Elijah was very worked up. And the Jewish perspective is that Elijah is too worked up, that he's been too worked up from the beginning, that God's actually trying to do one thing, and Elijah is using his prophetic fire to kind of force God's hand, and God's having to like meet Elijah where he is when he'd rather be doing something else. That's totally possible. You know what I just realized? Brent's probably been texting me like the whole evening, and I haven't even paid any attention. Oh yeah, he's giving me crap about spoilers. That's it. Let's see here. So yeah, do I think he did something wrong? Personally, I want to. Yeah, I do. Doesn't tell me. So I'll let it be. I don't think he had. I'll put it this way: I don't think he had to kill the prophets. And it does seem weird, him going down the mountain all the way to, which you all should come to Israel with me. We'll hike up Mount Carmel to the place that I believe it should have probably happened close to that. We'll talk about why. It's quite the hike. And he goes up and down that mountain at least 3 times, which mirrors somebody else that goes up and down a mountain an awful lot, Benjamin. Somebody else goes up and down a mountain at least 6, maybe 7 times. Keeps going up and down and up and down and up and down. And here's somebody else who also keeps mirroring that same character. I think if I know Benjamin, I know he knows who I'm talking about, but that's maybe why. Maybe. I don't know. Which I find interesting because the other character, it's Moses. Spoiler alert, it's Moses. Moses came down the mountain and killed a bunch of people too. See what we just did there? Good stuff. Okay, Casey, how do we distinguish between ideas that God gives you from ideas you arrive at on your own? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Obviously, it would be easy if I heard a voice, but real life rarely has that clarity. Yeah, I honestly can't make a distinction, and I've tried to stop making a distinction. I've started to view like my own subconscious and my own psyche and my own psychology. Why isn't the Holy Spirit in the middle of all that? So there's a lot of things where I feel like I think God's showing me this. I think God's telling me this. I think God's speaking to me in this way. And my like academic brain goes, well, doesn't that make perfect sense that your subconscious would do? Of course. And why wouldn't the Holy Spirit be wildly at work in my subconscious? What I need to be responsible with is stewarding those things, stewarding those desires, stewarding my emotional health, stewarding my psychology, looking out for the brokenness. Because there is no fail proof. This is the voice of the Lord. Making sure I'm in relationship and community. But yeah, I'm totally with you, Casey. And I've just started accepting that as like, yep, I think that's probably what it is. I think that's probably mostly what it is. And I think God's in all of it. I think God's using all of that, present in all of that, using my psychology. He's present in my desires. Yeah. Yep. Not either or, but both and. Um, and I haven't had to really articulate that a whole lot, so I probably need to work on some of my language and speaking to that more, but I'm with you. I'm curious as to what thoughts false teachers. It seems like a part of the evangelical church has adopted cancel culture mentality. Oh yeah, Shelby, I love that. The evangelical church was doing cancel culture long before the world was doing cancel culture. Can we remember the things that we boycotted when I was growing up in fundamentalist evangelicalism? The things we boycotted. Oh goodness. Yeah, what are my thoughts on false teachers? I don't know. That I really don't like a category of false teachers. It's just so destructive. There are teachers I don't prefer. There are teachers that I think are really destructive. Heretics? I don't know. False teachers? Is there false teaching? Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I'm sure I've had my share of false teaching. Again, we have to steward the thing that we're called to. We have to steward the thing that we're doing. We steward these things to the best of our ability. Um, yeah. I try not to cancel a whole lot. Everything is yours. Paul told the Colossians, all things are yours. I think it was the Colossians. All things are yours. Um, Paul went to Areopagus and quoted a Greek poet, a pagan poet. You can find truth anywhere. Keep your eyes peeled. You can also find garbage everywhere. Keep your eyes peeled. But you know, I personally can't stand some teachers, and yet some of those same teachers have said things. I'm like, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. That was a good moment for them. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, good comments about therapy. I like that. What's my morning routine? Then what's your daily routine? I would say there is my last thought of the day video would be a cool. You're on my YouTube channel, right? You're here. If you're here, you're here. So if you go to my videos, my last thought of the day video is called Thought of the Day Writing the Text, which is a cool video to watch. But then in the description to the video, I link to a video I made years ago, long before I was actually using my YouTube channel. I wasn't really creating videos to be on my YouTube channel, but there was a conversation. Oh, did you? Great. Brent says he linked that video. Um, Fantastic. Brent may be linking that video or another video I was chatting about, but he says he linked that video, so that's excellent. Because that would be what I want. I want to get you to that video, and it basically goes through what my morning routine was. Well, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. I don't know. It hasn't really changed a whole lot. I mean, I've moved. I'm in a new setting. My children have joined me now. They're old enough, but my morning routine really hasn't changed. There's some moving parts and variables, but watch that video, and that would be the easiest way for me to answer that question. Oh man, Boss Man's just killing me here with his commentary. Unbelievable prequel stuff. Any insights on Stephen's speech in Acts 7? Ugh. Not that I could do right now. There's some cool things and nuggets. I'm not excellent on that. It's not a great portion of my material. One of the things that you'll note is that in Acts, uh, Luke is doing something that Josephus does. It was a common writing style and technique in that part of history, where there's a bunch of history and then there's a speech, and the speech kind of like encapsulates and makes sense of the history that they just talked about. And then there's some more history, and then there's a speech. And these speeches work as like transition material. It makes sense of everything that you just read and sets you up for what's next. And so what Stephen's speech is one of those. Peter's speech in Acts 2. Stephen's speech in Acts 7. Maybe I think there's going to be another speech before the Jerusalem Council. There's a speech towards the end of Acts as Paul stands before Festus and Agrippa and Felix. So these speeches, that's their function. There's a function to those. Um, did you ever check out that cool pattern in Chosen season 2, episode 6? I did, and I think Caleb, there could be. I don't know. I think there could be something there. And the only thing that really gives me pause, because I want to say, nah, I don't think so. But what I believe the center of that episode would be is what they have as the thumbnail for the episode. And I can't remember the exact quote. It's the sentence or two right before Mary throws up. So I don't know, but I love the idea. Question in Acts 5:20, there the angel's word, go tell the people all about this new life. Are you aware of any Old Testament remez? Oh goodness. Closest I could get would be Ezra 9. Wow. That's a great, no, I don't. I've never thought about that as a remez, and Ezra 9 is a great potential possibility. Yes, great. That's a good question. Kevin, great. I love that. Question, have you come across anything as suggesting that Esau should have married Leah instead of Jacob? I feel like some issues would have been resolved if Isaac helped his sons marry. It's a great question. I haven't necessarily. I feel like there's something that's in the back of my mind that I did run across, but I can't remember where it was, who it was, if it was something I was reading, studying, or an email. But I feel like I had like one tidbit that's banging around back there, and I can't remember what it was. Good question though. Dang, yeah. Can you recommend a good Jewish Hebrew study Bible in English? I don't know if it's really a Jewish Hebrew study Bible. There's a ton of those out there. I haven't found a ton that I'm in love with. The kind of Bibles that I am in love with is historical contextual study Bibles. So I use the Archaeological Study Bible, Zondervan Archaeological Study Bible, but it's been out of print now for a decade. So you can still find them, but they're usually pretty expensive on Amazon. And it's the old NIV. It's the NIV 84. So it's probably not the one you want to buy. But my understanding is that the Historical Contextual Study Bible, also by Zondervan, is basically the same thing with the new NIV. Brent linked that to a superhero. I'm telling you guys, he's got like superpowers. He should be a part of the X-Men. Let's see here. Excited for the book? Yeah, me too. Yeah. Bunch of comments. Excited for the book. That's awesome. Yeah. I like that. Everybody tell me they can hear me. I think we got it. Let's see what was fresh and new. Evangelical leaders are perfect. I wish I knew all the context for all these. Guess. Killing me here. Do your children also practice the cleanliness things? Sorry, I don't know the right words. They'll start carrying the commandments at their bar and bat mitzvahs. So a bat mitzvah is for a girl, a bar mitzvah is for a boy. It means daughter of the commandment and son of the commandment. And it's called that because at 13, usually for the girls it's 12. We're doing Abby's at 13. Both my kids at 13. They become a daughter or a son of the commandment. At that point, it's their job to carry Torah. So they've watched it, they've learned about it, they've been hanging out with me for the last 3 years doing disciplines and studying and memorizing scripture and asking me questions. When they turn 13, that faith is their own. If they don't want to eat kosher, that's up to them. I'm not going to, it's their faith. It's their relationship with God. It's not going to be my rules. If they want to go have a bacon double cheeseburger, that's fine. That's their decision. It will be their walk with God that they have to learn about and they have to own and they have to be compelled by. Now in our house, we're not going to be making bacon double cheeseburgers, but if they want to go, I mean, and I don't want them to have to hide that. I want them to know you're free. You're free to follow God however your relationship with him sees fit. So if they choose to take up Torah, if they take up Torah and make mistakes, it's great. If they don't take up Torah, it'll be hard, but it will be great. If they take up Torah and walk better than I do, great. But they'll start when they're 13. That's the answer to your question. When will they start? They'll start practicing all that stuff when they become a daughter or a son of the commandment. So at 13 years old, that's where they would be expected to start carrying Torah. It's not like they live outside of Torah now, but they don't practice like some of those specific ritual cleanliness laws, all that kind of stuff. But they've been watching it. They've been learning about it. They know about it. So it's a good question. What has been your favorite teaching from Bema? I don't know. There's been some good ones. I'm trying to remember the ones I've gotten so worked up over. Man, there was one in session 6. What was it that was so good? Man, I was so it was right towards the beginning of session 6. What was it? I can't remember. I don't know. It's a good question. Well, I bet you'll know when you get there. There's something in session 6. I cannot remember what it is, but maybe it was oh yeah. Towards the beginning of session 6, there will be a teaching that I learned about Genesis from Foreman after I recorded session 1. So it's not in session 1 because I hadn't learned it yet. And then I learned the Midrash about Isaac on the mountain with Abraham and the sacrifice. And oh my goodness, it's still like I remember listening to that podcast going, man, this one came from there's a lot of podcasts that come from here, and that podcast came from down here. So that was cool. That was something. If I go, you're going to have to carry me. Yeah. That's a roar idea. You bet it is. When is the next time you're leading an Israel trip? Go to bemadiscipleship.com/news. I'm sure Brent will put that link. I'm not sure where any of these links are showing up. Brent says he's linking stuff, and I can't see anything. But I trust Brent because Brent doesn't lie to me. So I'm sure Brent's linking things somewhere. I just can't see the replies or whatever. But yeah, go to bemadiscipleship.com/news. You will see the orientation and registration for the Israel Low Contact. Here's Brent. Oh, Brent is boss man. Dude, guys, that's the greatest thing ever. That I have been giving boss man a hard time, and I didn't even know that was Brent Billings. That is fantastic. Well, I'm still not seeing your links, Brent, but nevertheless. Yeah, Brent's posting a whole bunch of stuff right there for that. Where I just recorded literally right before this live stream, I just uploaded the orientation for Turkey, which we're going to release next month in 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks, less than that. I don't know, whatever it is. But the next Bema Messenger, we're going to post the orientation for Turkey, and then registration will be the next month. So August, we'll be opening registration for Turkey, and then full contact Israel should be orientation for that should go out in September, and registration will open in October for full contact Israel. That's our timeline, everybody. Everything you need to know can be found at bemadiscipleship.com/news. And if you really want to know, if I don't want to have to go, then sign up for the Bema Messenger. Same link, bemadiscipleship.com/news. Sign up for the Bema Messenger, and then you'll get an email once a month, our newsletter, and that's where we're going to announce things first. So sign up for that, and you can get it first. Gus says you have to authorize me on your YouTube channel. Yeah, who's got the power now for my links to actually show up? How do I do that? I need to authorize. I don't know how to authorize you, Brent. I'm sorry. Add moderator. Pin message. Report. Remove. I made you a moderator. I don't know if that helps. There you go, Brent. You can moderate away. Link it up. Really sucks if your old links don't show up. If you have to relink everything, that's no good. Oh, but just go to the website. Everything can be found there. Go to martysolomon.com. Stuff can be found there. All the goodies. Hey, there he goes. That's what I'm talking about. We're in business now. Look out, everyone. Brent Billings is going to start posting links like crazy. Let's see here. Do you remember where you learned the Midrash story about the rabbi who always had his prayers answered, but eventually? Yeah, I heard that one from Ray. Straight from Ray. I have found some of these on the internet, some of those stories, on not all of them. I'm also assuming that some of them come from the Agadah, the Midrash Agadah, the Book of Legends. Some people, I have a copy of that. Somebody sent it to me. A wonderful Baymal listener sent that gift to me. It was gorgeous. But yeah, I heard that one, Jacob. I heard that one straight from Ray on my all the trips. I heard him tell that story on every trip I've been on with Ray. So low contact means you just can't give hugs to people. Low contact means no hiking. Cooler temperatures, no hiking. It's not the trip. If you can do the hiking, that is not the trip that you want, ladies and gentlemen. You want the full contact hiking. 7 to 12 miles of hiking a day, 2,000 feet of daily elevation change, 110-degree heat. Yeah, that's what you want right there. That's the experience you're going for. But if you physically can't do that for whatever reason, then come join us for the low contact trip. It's still got a whole bunch of spots. Registration is open. We still got spots there. Oh, let's see here. That's great. Dead Poets. One of my favorite movies, by the way. Dead Poets Society. Favorite movies of all time. Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for listening and being a part. Have I read Abraham Joshua Heschel's The Sabbath? One of our most recommended books. I think right there in session 1, I think like episode 1 or 2, like it's one of our first book recommendations in the podcast. Excellent. It's a classic. Abraham Joshua Heschel is one of the greatest Jewish thinkers of our modern era, the last 100 years, 200 years. And all of his work is just incredible. Not easy to read, but there you go. All right, guys. I think we kind of got through. I think Benjamin did ask, do you have to go to Israel first or can you go to the Turkey trip first? Turkey's designed to be part 2, but you don't have to. There's a lot of reasons why people might not go to Turkey and might choose to go. Maybe they've already been to Israel like once or twice, and so they just want to go to Turkey with somebody else. They've been to Israel with somebody else. They want to go to Turkey with me. Maybe they're just more interested in Turkey. I don't know, whatever. Maybe the timetable and the calendar works for them. If you listen to the podcast, you'd be just fine. One of the things that people hear say in Israel all the time, which I just don't get, is they'll be like, but you've already taught on all this. And I'm like, yeah, but now you're here. So be prepared if you come to Israel. There is plenty of new material, but there's also a lot of material you've heard before on the podcast. But now you get to learn about it in person. And I think it's incredible. And I've never understood all the students that are like, I've heard this before. Yeah, old news. Like, man, you paid $5,000 to fly across the world so you could stand here where it happened and learn it. But if you've listened to the podcast, you have enough goodies that you can do Turkey no problem. No problem. It's designed to be part 2. Israel's part 1. And you'll hear that in the orientation. I start the whole orientation for Turkey kind of explaining that. But you can go to Turkey. Yep. Absolutely. My 11-year-old wants to know my favorite Bible character. You want to know how narcissistic I am? Peter. That's just I've just always been the most fascinated with Peter. Obviously, we're not counting Jesus. The other favorite Bible character would be Esther. Let's get a woman in there. Man, have I enjoyed learning about Esther. Woo! I respect the daylights out of that woman. What a cool thing. So those are the first 2 that come to mind. That was me just answering right off a whim. I'll probably come up with better answers, but that was just me. Peter, Esther. Okay. Low contact. Oh, is Hot Marshmallow 0? Is that Dawn? I don't know who any of these people are because of their handle names. Yeah, Brent, you're awesome. Peter and Marty, both Enneagram 8s. You know it. You know it. Okay. I think I'm about ready to call this thing. We are at 2 hours. We are right at 2 hours. 1 hour, 54 minutes, and 30 seconds. I've talked so much that I have closed my calorie ring, and that's glorious. How about that? I'm starting that workout ring. I got to close that workout ring, so we're gonna get out of here. Yeah, Rabbi Foreman's book on Esther blew my mind. Absolutely, The Queen You Thought You Knew by Rabbi Foreman. Guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Let me tell you, if you're still here, we got 41 people still watching. If you're still here and you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, do it if you want to. Please, if you're willing, do that. If you want to go find my other social media handles, go follow there. It just helps me do all kinds of things with my life. It's a part of what we're trying to do. So go do that. Thank you for all of you who financially support stuff. If you want to find all those things, like where do I find your social media stuff? Just go to martysolomon.com. You can find kind of all the goodies there. At the very bottom of that page are all my little Facebook icon, Twitter, all the things. So you can just click on those and it'll take you where you need to go. Like I said, my personal Facebook page, don't friend me on that. Go find my Bema discipleship Facebook page because I can't add any more friends on my personal one. Sad day. So go find the Bema page on Facebook. All right, guys. I loved hanging out. I love this platform. I'm a fan of YouTube. This is great. I'm down for that. So I think next month we're on Facebook, Instagram. Can't remember. But we'll see you for next month's Q&A. Sign up for the Bema Messenger. It'll get you all the dates. You'll know about all the things, all the stuff that's going on. You can see where I'm going next, where I'm traveling, where I'm speaking, all the goodies. So it was just always good to hang out with you guys. You guys are such an encouragement to me. So thank you on every level. And there's a big button here that says end stream. Here we go, everybody. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks a lot.